The Chief's last act of service. I'm Paul Folger.
I'm Jessica Shambach. Investigators say someone shot and killed Nichols Hills Fire Chief Keith Bryan inside his home. We have team coverage tonight. Carla Wade has more on the Chief's organ donation. But first tonight,
I don't know, this man, this 26-year-old man with a hoodie cap on walked into our house, through our garage, and he walked into the living room and he shot my husband in the head. I just called 911 on my cell phone.
Yes.
Did you get are you coming to my house?
Today, we're diving deep into the twisted tale of Rebecca Bryan, a once respected real estate agent from Mustang, Oklahoma, who found herself at the center of a murder investigation that shocked the nation. This case has more twists and turns than a pretzel maker's workshop, so grab a snack and buckle up for a wild ride. Our story begins with Keith Bryan, a 52-year-old fire chief from Nichols Hills, Oklahoma. Keith was a stand-up guy, a real pillar of the community, and a hero to many. He had dedicated his life to saving kittens from trees and rescuing people from burning buildings, and his bravery and selflessness had earned him a shiny badge and the respect of his fellow firefighters. But on the night of September 20th, 2011, Keith's life was cut tragically short when he was shot in the head inside his own home. And who was the trigger-happy culprit? None other than his own wife, Rebecca Bryan. Talk about a plot twist. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could possibly drive a woman to murder her own husband in cold blood? Well, as we'll soon discover, Rebecca Bryan was no ordinary housewife. Behind her perfectly coiffed hair and megawatt smile lay a web of lies, deceit, and betrayal that would make even the most seasoned true crime aficionado's head spin faster than a dreidel on Hanukkah. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the case, let's take a moment to set the scene. Keith and Rebecca Bryan seemed to have it all: a beautiful home in the suburbs, successful careers, and a marriage that had lasted longer than most Hollywood romances. They had been together for 33 years, which is like a century in marriage years, and had raised two strapping young lads, Trent and Kent. From the outside looking in, the Bryans were the quintessential American family. But as we all know, appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface, their marriage was shakier than a Jenga tower on a bumpy road, and Rebecca had a secret that would ultimately bring the whole thing crashing down. Rewind to 2009, when Rebecca met a man named Mark Holbrook at a real estate conference. Mark was a successful businessman from Hugo, Oklahoma, and the two quickly hit it off. They began an extramarital affair that was steamier than a sauna in July, and Rebecca fell head over heels in love. But when Keith found out about the affair in January 2010, Rebecca was forced to make a choice. She could either end things with Mark and try to patch things up with Keith, or she could kick Keith to the curb and ride off into the sunset with her new beau. Rebecca, being the indecisive type, filed for divorce but then had a change of heart and decided to give Keith another chance. Fast forward to the summer of 2011, and Rebecca's behavior had become more erratic than a squirrel on caffeine. She was constantly texting and calling Mark, even though he had made it clear that he was done with her. She was also engaging in a series of sordid sexual encounters with random men, including a stranger she met at a bar in Texas and a real estate client in McLeod, Oklahoma. Talk about mixing business with pleasure. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Rebecca's behavior was her complete lack of remorse or empathy for her husband. In the days leading up to Keith's murder, she was caught on tape, telling a friend that she wished he would just kick the bucket already. She even joked about hiring a hitman to take him out, which is about as funny as a root canal without anesthesia. And then on the day of the murder, Rebecca took things to a whole new level of crazy. She stopped by her real estate client's house for a quick afternoon romp before heading home to Mustang. Later that evening, she left a voicemail for Mark. declaring her undying love for him and mentioning an expected inheritance. Gee, I wonder where she thought that money was going to come from. Just a few hours later, at around 10 p.m., Rebecca called 911 to report that an intruder had broken into their home and shot Keith in the head. She claimed that the shooter was a young man in his mid-20s wearing a hooded sweatshirt and that he had apologized to her before fleeing the scene in a small, dark pickup truck. Because nothing says, "I'm sorry," like a bullet to the brain, right?
Please.
I don't know, this man, this 25, 26-year-old man with a hoodie cap on walked into our house to do our garage, and he walked into the living room and he shot my husband in the head.
Look,
I just called 911 on my cell phone.
Yes.
Did you get are you coming to my house?
Blue,
He
a
turned
wife-
around to me and he said, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." He said that your husband should have hired me.
But as investigators would soon discover, Rebecca's story had more holes than a slice of Swiss cheese at a mouse convention. For starters, there was no sign of forced entry at the Bryan home, and none of the neighbors had seen or heard anything suspicious that night. It was almost as if the intruder had vanished into thin air, or maybe he was just a figment of Rebecca's imagination. Moreover, when police searched the house, they found a smorgasbord of incriminating evidence that pointed directly to Rebecca. In the laundry room, they discovered a .380 caliber Ruger pistol, a spent shell casing, a rubber glove, and a bullet-riddled blanket. The gun was later matched to a box found under Rebecca's side of the mattress, and the serial number confirmed that it was her weapon. Talk about a smoking gun! As if that wasn't damning enough, investigators also uncovered a trail of text messages and voicemails that painted a disturbing picture of Rebecca's state of mind in the days leading up to the murder. In one particularly chilling exchange, she told a friend that she was ready for Keith to go, and that she couldn't wait to collect on his life insurance policy. I guess money really can't buy happiness, but it can buy a one-way ticket to prison. Faced with a mountain of evidence, prosecutors charged Rebecca with first-degree murder and sought the death penalty.
Late breaking at 5, investigators say it wasn't an intruder, but the fire chief's own wife who shot and killed him. Keith Bryan died Wednesday after the shooting at his Mustang home. We have team coverage of the arrest. We begin with Wendell Edwards in Mustang. Wendell?
Paul, police say it all came down to evidence. You see, Becky Bryan was the only one home when she says someone came into her house and shot her husband. But police say that someone, according to the evidence, was her. She first told her story to a 911 operator. An intruder shot her husband.
I don't know, this man, this 25, 26-year-old man with a hoodie cap on walked into our house to do our garage, and he walked into the living room and he shot my husband in the head.
But investigators say evidence they found inside this house just didn't match. Specifically, a handgun similar to this one found in the clothes dryer in the utility room. Take a look. This is a picture from YouTube when the couple put their home up for sale earlier this year. The box the gun came in, we're told, discovered in the master bedroom, under the side of the bed where Becky Bryan slept.
Also found near the handgun box were 2 Blazer 380 auto ammunition boxes, the same brand of ammunition that was loaded inside that gun.
And take a look at this couch. Again, pictures from YouTube. Investigators found another piece of evidence here, a .380 caliber full metal projectile.
That projectile was recovered from the center cushion of the couch where Keith Bryan had been seated at the time he was shot.
Police arrested Becky Bryan without incident just past noon at this hotel in Oklahoma City.
It's a safe community. It continues to be a safe community. This was an isolated domestic incident.
She's facing a murder one charge. And obviously a very difficult time for the Bryan family. I'm told that her family, they were present at that hotel when police and authorities arrested Becky Bryan. But tonight there are still some lingering questions. What about a motive, and will police make any more arrests? I'll answer those for you when I see you again tonight at 6. Right now, we're live this evening in Mustang. Wendell Edwards, Eyewitness News 5.
But in a surprising twist, Rebecca's defense team managed to convince the jury to spare her life, arguing that she had been a victim of emotional abuse and that the shooting had been an act of self-defense. I'm not sure how shooting your husband in the head while he's watching TV qualifies as self-defense, but hey, I'm not a lawyer. In the end, Rebecca was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She remains behind bars to this day, still maintaining her innocence and claiming that an intruder was responsible for Keith's death.
Rebecca Bryan was sentenced on Tuesday to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bryan was found guilty in May of killing her husband, Keith Bryan. Nichols Hills fire chief was shot to death in the couple's Mustang home back in 2011. Rebecca Bryan originally told investigators an intruder shot her husband, but detectives later found the gun and bullet casings in the couple's dryer. The items found in the home were key evidence in the case. The jury recommended a life sentence, which was upheld by Canadian County District Judge Gary Miller. Keith Bryan's colleagues, as well as the Canadian County District Attorney, spoke about the decision following today's court proceedings.
There were 12 good citizens from our county, from our community, that I agree with Mr. James did a good job. They listened intently, they paid attention, they took their charge seriously, and they rendered a verdict. And that verdict was clear, it was undeniable, unmistakable, and the judge chose to follow that, which obviously we're pleased with.
Well, it's about what I expected. My reaction is kind of the same as it was at the trial. When it was over, I didn't feel relief. There wasn't anything to be happy about. It was just a real numb feeling. It's not quite that bad today. This is what I expected. I'm just glad it's over.
It's clear that he had lived his life devoted to helping others and to saving lives, and to have his life taken in the manner that it was is such a contrast. And again, it goes back to the brutal and senseless nature of his murder.
Keith will always live on with us at the fire department. He was there for 32 years. That's a long time, and he hired, I think, half of the firefighters we have now, he hired. So his legacy will live on for a long time, and he'll never really be gone from that department.
I guess denial isn't just a river in Egypt. But for those who knew Keith Bryan, there is no doubt about what really happened that night. He was a good man, a loving husband and father, and a dedicated public servant who had devoted his life to helping others. He didn't deserve to die at the hands of the woman he had loved and trusted for more than 3 decades. And yet, as tragic as Keith's story is, it's hardly unique. Every year, thousands of men and women are murdered by their intimate partners, often in a fit of rage or jealousy. These are the silent victims of domestic violence, the ones whose stories rarely make headlines but whose lives are no less valuable or important. In the end, the story of Keith and Rebecca Bryan is a cautionary tale about the dangers of secrets, lies, and betrayal. It's a reminder that even the most seemingly perfect relationships can hide dark and twisted truths, and that the people we love and trust the most are sometimes capable of the most heinous acts imaginable. But it's also a story about the resilience of the human spirit and the power of love and forgiveness in the face of unspeakable tragedy. In the years since Keith's death, his family and friends have worked tirelessly to keep his memory alive and to find meaning and purpose in the wake of such a senseless act of violence. They have started a foundation in his name dedicated to supporting other families who have lost loved ones to domestic violence. They have spoken out about the need for better resources and support for victims of abuse, and have worked to raise awareness about the warning signs of a potentially dangerous relationship. And perhaps most importantly, they have refused to let Rebecca's actions define Keith's legacy. They remember him as the kind, generous, and loving man he was, not as the victim of a brutal and senseless crime. As we close out this episode of True Crime Legacy, I want to take a moment to honor Keith Bryan and all the other victims of domestic violence who have lost their lives at the hands of their abusers. Your stories may not always make the front pages, but your lives matter, and your memories will live on through the people who loved you. And to anyone out there who may be struggling in an abusive relationship, I want you to know that you are not alone. There is help available, and there are people who care about you and want to see you safe and happy. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for the support you need to break free from the cycle of violence and abuse. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the dark and twisted world of true crime. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, if you ever find yourself married to a real estate agent with a wandering eye and an itchy trigger finger, maybe it's time to start sleeping with one eye open. Just a thought.